We all have times when we're positive or when we're negative. How to parent the negative child. Let's dig into that today. We've done a lot of videos about parenting, and I would encourage you to take a look at the positive parenting playlist that we've got here on the channel. You can link to it right up here. And that will have a lot of videos that will add to what I'm sharing with you here today. When it comes to difficult children, I think it's important to remember what we've already talked about in some of those other videos about the stages of development, and specifically stages of moral development, meaning what is it that drives their choices? Why do kids do what they do? And there's always a very practical reason why a child does whatever he or she is doing. It comes back to this. So as a quick review, on this axis, on the up and down axis, we've got control, meaning control over your own life. How much control do you have? And it goes from 0 control up to 100% control. So you can have all of it or none of it or somewhere in between. Now this x-axis is all about maturity. How grown up you are. The most common way to think about maturity is in terms of age. So over here on this end at birth, how much control do you have over your own life? Yeah, hardly any. You can make a big noise and a big stink, but that's about it. So not much at all. How about when you're an adult? Now when I ask kids about this, how much control do the adults have? They're like, oh, they've got all of it, right? You and I know there's some small print there. But the short version is, as an adult, you get to have most of the control in your life. So this line through the middle represents the increase in control that we get as we increase in maturity. And that'll all make sense to you. Now, it's not just about age, it's about stage. So we've changed the maturity dimension to be about 3 stages of maturity. Stage 1 is the least mature. That's where there's fighting and yelling and screaming and whining and tantrums and all that fun stuff that we typically refer to as being negative, right? Well, it's not negative for a toddler, for a 2-year-old. Why? Because it's age typical and age appropriate, really. If your teenager is throwing tantrums, now we got a problem. See, that's less mature. Stage 2 is kind of that balance stage where there's cooperation. You stop fighting, you start cooperating. You don't want any trouble, you want to keep the peace. And so you're going to work with people. Well, you get to have more control if you're on stage 2, and the parents back off a little bit up here on the top part. Stage 3 is the most mature. That's where there's responsibility and empathy and initiative and all those great things are happening at stage 3. So the crux of today's video is, how do you parent a negative child? Well, meaning a child who is demonstrating a lower stage of moral development than what you would expect given their age, right? So you've got an older child who's throwing the tantrums and being negative and oppositional, all that fun stuff. So I'm going to give you 3 C's today, 3 C words that will help us understand what to do at each stage of maturity. And this will really help with your parenting toolbox. So let's start with stage 1. At stage 1, the only thing that works is consequences. Consequences. Why? Because that's how they're thinking. At stage 1, kids will only respond when there's something in it for me, or if I'm going to get clobbered when I don't do this. See, that's not a very mature level of thinking, but this is what we've got to work with at stage 1. So we want to use consequences. Now, consequences are going to bleed over to stage 2 as well, but there's an important difference in the kind of consequences we use at stage 1 or at stage 2. And the difference has to do with cooperation. Remember I said cooperation is part of a stage 2 level of development? You have to be at least at a stage 2 of moral development to even have cooperation. So what that means is the kind of consequences we use on stage 1 have to be the kind that do not require cooperation. You follow? Yeah, why? Because we don't get it until stage 2. From our kids, I mean. So we'll use consequences that we control 100%. This is so key. Because if you've got a child who is refusing to cooperate with you, and you're giving that child consequences that actually require cooperation, you're going to be frustrated, probably angry and resentful, and that's not helping anybody. So let's get back to the kind of consequences that do not require cooperation, and then we'll be in a much better position as a parent. Now, what do I mean by that? Think through, what do I control? This is the key. What do I control? What can I enforce 100%? I remember working with one of my teenagers once who was in this stage 1 kind of, I'm not going to cooperate with you mode. And Vicki and I sat down and we went through a list of things that we control 100%, whether they agree with us or not. Think about it. You control access to certain things in your home. You control what you provide. You control the services that are available to that child. Do you see where I'm going with this? We figured out that we control the flow of electricity to certain rooms in our home, including the one where he was living. Yeah, you see what we're talking about? What do you control? That's all that we need to worry about at stage 1. Stage 2, we're going to use consequences that do require cooperation. Okay, example. For an older child, you can have them write an essay, for example, okay, about some topic that you're wanting them to learn about as a result of what got you into this disciplinary action in the first place, right? Now, writing an essay requires cooperation. So you're never going to assign that to a stage 1 kid. Okay, now sometimes you can have that be a graduation. For example, you can say, okay, I want you to write an essay about that. Well, I'm not going to write an essay. Okay, when you decide to write the essay about it, you can have access to whatever it is that you're restricting access to. Do you see where we're going? So, control is the main thing about the consequences. Now, when we move to stage 2, we can also add this C word, communication. Now, this is a stage. Stage 2 is where your child will cooperate with you. They're willing to talk to you. You can have a rational conversation. So we're going to add some communication at stage 2. I wouldn't waste a lot of time with talk on stage 1. That's kind of like trying to teach a pig to sing. It just frustrates you and makes the pig mad. They're not listening at stage 1. Stage 2, they are. So you can start to have conversations that sound like, hey, buddy, we need to not fight with your younger brothers and sisters. And you'll get a response that looks something like, I know, I'm just so frustrated, or whatever, right? They're going to talk to you. So communication comes in at stage 2. Now, what about stage 3? Well, that's really interesting. At stage 3, you can do consultation. This is where your kids come to you and ask for your wise, sagely advice, right? Mom, I'm really having a problem with this or that. What do you think? And you give your opinion, and then they respond with, oh, thank you, dear sweet mother. I will try that and report back. Right. Do kids ever do that? Yes, they can. But maybe then they go home to their own 5 kids. I think kids can learn to be on stage 3 before they're 35. But the whole point is at stage 3, there's a high enough level of maturity that you as a parent, you don't have to do very much in terms of discipline, because it's all self-discipline, self-control. Does that sound like the same thing to you? So we've got consequences at stage 1. Most parents, when they ask me, how do I parent a negative child? They're talking about a stage 1 level of maturity child. And again, review the playlist, go back through our parenting tools here on the channel, and see what you can find that would be relevant. Stage 2, they start to cooperate with you, so you can communicate with them at that point. You're still going to use consequences, but we graduate to the kind of consequences that actually require cooperation. And then at stage 3, you just get to back off and smile because your kids are doing self-discipline. Hopefully that helps. I just love how positivity bubbles over to everything that we do. I hope you're enjoying these videos. I would love to hear from you. If you leave your comments down below, I'll take a look and respond.